Right, so my first one is of my mum and my dad. And I think this picture in particular, I think means the world to me. I think it's one of the last pictures that I've had of my mum and dad. But when I look at this picture, this is foundation. These are the two people that kind of brought me into the world and shaped me, and has kind of influenced who I am. And they've kind of, you know what I mean, in terms of my journey, the skills, and the love, you know what I mean, that they've given me. So this is a really important picture. Leading on to that, this is a family picture. So this one has my mum and dad in it, but it's also, I've brought this one because it's got my 4 other sisters in it. So I come from a family of 5 girls, no brothers. So this one too, as far as I'm concerned, is linked to my foundation. And then my final one is of me and my children. These 3 pictures in particular sit in my bedroom, and this is the first thing that I get up every morning and I see, and it's the last thing that I see at night. So my mum and dad, I've lost. I lost my dad quite recently. And I've also lost 2 of my sisters. And I think a part of this, I'm going to kind of explain why I'm the way that I am, and I do the things that I do, and how much that this is connected. Okay, so I grew up in a little place, what I called is Avondale Road in Whitmarines. So we had Avondale Road, Allen Road and Ritchie Street. We used to call it the Triangle because Ritchie Street was at the top, and then you had these 2 roads that came down side by side, Avondale and Allen Road. My mum and dad moved there in 1960, along with a lot of other black community members. And some of these people they'd actually travelled from Jamaica with. So you can imagine they must have been, off the top of my head, at least 30, 40 families that grew up together on that road. So it was very much a strong community. We lived quite closely together, so we looked out for each other. We went to school with each other. Our parents knew each other. We shared what we had, which was important. So I remember I've got visions and memories of people not being well, and my mum, and I was only young then, cooking and saying to me, go and knock number 49 and drop this off because he's not very well, just to help out the family. I remember I've got visions and memories of waking up in my bed with my sisters and finding other people in the bed. And it wasn't only until I was later, kind of like older, that I realised that these people were my siblings. They were kids in the community that my mum used to look after. And we've still got the relationships with those people. So my mum was very much that person who everybody used to knock the door. My mum would help anybody and give anything, you know what I mean, that she's got. So it kind of shaped, as I said, the way that me and my siblings were brought up. So I'll go on to, and I'll talk about my second sister, my sister Rose. So my sister Rose is one of my biggest role models. So Rose was very bright, she was very smart, she was very loving. She was the typical older sister who taught the rest of her siblings so much. So she taught me how to sew, she taught me how to cook, she learnt me lots of skills, you know what I mean, and those things I've still got with me and I'm still carrying through life. Rose got educated at an early age. She went to university. She got all the qualifications in her life that she wanted to. And I think sophisticatedly what she done is she made sure that she pulled us all behind her. And I remember that she always used to say that if she makes it, we all make it. And in turn, she pulled my sister Millie behind. Millie went off. Millie's now a qualified social worker. She brought my sister Pat behind her, and Pat was a qualified social worker too. And she brought my eldest sister Rose behind her, who was a qualified social worker. And then she pushed and she pulled me behind her, and I became a qualified youth worker. I think I've lost my sister Rose, and I think this is the bit that I come to. So I lost Rose in 2015, and it was a major blow for me because she was the one that I'd always go to if I had a problem. She was the one that I'd go to if I needed that extra hug. She was the one that I'd go to if, you know, just that person that would listen to me, that person that would never judge me, that person that would give me the advice. So I lost her in 2015. I then, in 2016, which was just a few months after I lost my mum, that was in the March. And then in the May 2016, I lost my sister Pat. So I lost 3 members of my family in probably around 5 months. So it was a major blow because you can imagine we were a very close knit and tight family. We'd spend Christmases together. We had the routine where my mum would cook for all of us in the week, look after all of our kids. And when I say cook for us, we'd come home from work and there'd be 4 pots of food on the table. You'd collect your children and you'd collect your pot of food as well. That went on for years, you know. We were fortunate, we were lucky because we had the support that enabled us to achieve the things that we had in life, because back then childcare, and I think even now, was quite expensive. And my mum and my dad done all of those things for us. And then on Sundays, that was the day where mum didn't cook. So then mum and dad would come to each other's house, so we'd take it in turns. I would cook one week, Rose would cook one week, Millie would cook, and so forth, and Pat would cook one week. So, you know, we were very much close to each other. We lived for each other. I remember being 13 years old. I remember back in those days, it's not that we could go out and, you know, once you finished school and you went home, that was it, you know what I mean? You were in the house, you were doing your homework. You know, our parents, you know, it's not that we could go. Our parents, I think, were very, they were scared, you know what I mean, that if we were out and about, you know, that we'd get into things, and they were very overprotective. So when my sister Rose started to work at the local youth club, it was like, wow, you know what I mean, because we could then go out and we could go with her. So I was to go with her 2 nights a week. That was like first lot of freedom. That was back, I was 13 years old then. Really enjoyed it, you know what I mean. You know, we were with our friends, but then I thought, ooh, kind of like, you know what I mean, what she's doing. Watched her, watched how she was around other people. So by the time I was 15 years old, it kind of was instilled in me. I then started to do voluntary work, really enjoyed that, started to plan activities for people that I grew up with and used to hang around with. So we'd do little trips like to the swimming baths, you know what I mean? So that was like my planning skills started to come in. Started to enjoy that even more. But obviously by the time I got to 16 years old, I was kind of like looking for a full-time job. But what I'd still done, I still kept hold, you know what I mean, of that that part-time job, that part-time role, that volunteering. I went to the hospital and I had a job as an auxiliary nurse. And I'd done that full-time, but I still held on to my youth work and still would go back and still would volunteer. Managed to get paid work when I was 17 years old. So I kind of done full-time auxiliary nursing and part-time youth work, and I kept the 2 going, considering in my head when I left school I wanted to be a nurse. So that was kind of like the road that I was going to go down. I was going to get qualified, you know what I mean, and I was going to go into to care. that started to change because I think the youth work was kind of bringing out skills and things and satisfaction inside of me. And I decided, I think by the time I was, I must have been about 18 years old, I decided that, yeah, kind of youth work's for me. And I think what kind of pushed me even further is I was volunteering at this, still volunteering at the local youth centre, and we had kind of like a new full-time worker working there. And I thought, you know, I'd love to do that job. And then a position came up, and I thought, I'm going to apply for that. And I was devastated when somebody turned around and said, oh, well, you haven't got the qualifications to do it. And I thought, well, I've been volunteering, I think I can do this. And I felt really gutted because I think it wasn't a case of that person saying to me that you can do this job. It was, you haven't got the qualifications, so you can't do it. So Lorna being Lorna, I thought, okay, so I'm going to have to kind of change, and I'm going to do something about that. I went off to uni and I got my JNC. And I think what that learned me is, you know, nobody's not going to tell me that I can't do something, you know what I mean? And I think that's the worst thing with me. If you tell me that I can't do it, that's going to make me even more determined to be able to do it. So I went off and got the qualifications and came back with it and said, well, yeah, I've got it now, you know what I mean? And watch what I'm going to kind of do with it. That started and kick-started my youth work career. So I've been at this job probably now for probably about 41, 42 years. And it's been an absolutely amazing journey. To be in somebody's life and you know that person maybe has struggles, maybe that person needs support, and to take them on a journey, to get them to see their abilities, to get them to see the skills and the things that they can do, and to support them to do that. For me, it's about changing lives. And I think that's the thing that's always driven me and made me passionate, because I know that I had that role model that's kind of pushed me, supported me, nurtured me. That role model that said to me, now I've given you these skills, now you need to go out and you need to kind of pass those skills on. So I think to answer that question is to see a young person maybe who is struggling, to work with them, to bring them through, to get them across that line. To be able to come to the age that I am now, and to be on the journey that I've been on, and to be walking in with Marines, to be in town and to see the young people that I've worked with to come up and say, you know something, Lorna, I made it through. And to hear that so many times, I think is the thing that brings me the satisfaction and the most joy in my life. So I think it's, you can, you know, I can think of many of examples, because I've worked in every youth club across Wolverhampton, but to come to the point that I look at it as a whole, and young people as a whole. I've been into town and I've seen young people and meet my son, you know what I mean? And you know, I know that person's book was written that they weren't going to amount to anything, that they were going to go to prison, that they were going to come out and their lives aren't going to be, you know what I mean? It's almost, I think every young person that I've impacted on, that I've worked with, I think is an example for me, because I think that's brought me joy. And it's not always about having the positives, you know what I mean? It's having the seeds, I always say, and that seed might have not made an impact now, but you know that in years to come, that when the water catches it, it'll start to grow. So I think sowing the seeds, but I can never pick one, because if I sat here and picked one, I'd have to tell you about another one, and I'd have to tell you about another one after that. I just think the journey in itself, you know what I mean? There's been a lot of amazing stories, and those are the stories that have kept me going. They've driven me, they've pushed me, you know what I mean? They've brought me what I see as great satisfaction. So my first cohort of young people are probably in the age range of 46, 47, 48 now. Yeah. Because I started so young, I was working with young people that was just slightly younger than me. So I have young people now that are grandparents. that I still see, you know what I mean, that still talk about their journey and when we were around. And I remember, you know, to even bring it back and bring some life into it, I remember planning activities, booking a coach and bringing a group of young people to Derby, and I must have probably been 16, 17 years old, and the rest of the volunteers and the workers that was there, we weren't, you know what I mean, we were young, and we'd booked the coach, we cooked food, and we got the young people involved, and we, you know what I mean, it was kind of like a community effort. And I just look back and I just think, wow, you know what I mean, 'cause we were only kids ourselves, but you know, the community, the strength of community and coming together enabled us, you know what I mean, to achieve things at a very young age. But to put a number, to say that it's been 50, 60, I think we were grounded, you know what I mean, from way back when. And I think that always came from that my parents came here. My parents settled, you know what I mean, in Wolverhampton. My journey started in Wolverhampton, and I always said that that's where my journey would finish. I'm passionate about wolves. I think wolves have always been my life, and I wouldn't have changed it, you know what I mean, for the world. I think if I was going to invest and keep reinvesting as I am now, it would have to be where I come from. But for me, at the end of the day, I think if my journey would, I always made up my mind that my journey would start here and it would finish here. There's so much to do. And I think because I started and I was so young, I couldn't have seen myself, you know what I mean, kind of venture out. I think if I was going to lay the legacy and the foundation, it would have to be where and to kind of pick up where my family has left it. So yeah, wolves is my life. I don't know no difference. And I think it's because it's always been instilled inside of me. I come from a family, especially in terms of my mum, and my mum and dad always used to say, do good, because good will follow you. And if you can help somebody, help them. But I've grown up and that's all I've ever seen. And that's all I've ever known. So even with my siblings, it's the same, you know what I mean? We come from the background where we give, and I enjoy giving, you know what I mean? So even if I don't get anything in return, it doesn't matter, you know what I mean? Because I think that life is about giving rather than receiving back. You don't always get things back. It's hard to explain the way that you're going to think that you're going to get it back. You know, my mum always said that sometimes if you don't, and you might not get it back in your lifetime, but your children, your children's children will probably reap the benefit of it, you know what I mean? But there's nothing sweeter than to be able to say to somebody, you know something, I can help you, or I'll be there, and that kind of drives me, that keeps me going, and I strive, you know what I mean, from that, and I absolutely love it, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world. If I look at my kids, they're very much the same, that giving. So one of my boys the other day went to the barber shop to have his hair cut, and he came back and he told me this story, and I just looked and kind of smiled. And he was having his hair cut, and a woman came in, and I think the woman had about 3 or 4 kids, and she was waiting, you know what I mean, waiting her turn to have their hair cut. And, you know, he looked over at her and, you know, he just thought to himself, what can I do? You know what I mean? Just looked at her and he said, there was no reasoning why he done. And he said he got up and on his way out, he took £10 out of his pocket and he put it in the woman's hand and walked off, and she looked up at him and he said, I didn't turn back, you know what I mean, because it wasn't about, and he didn't want everybody to kind of see what he had done, but he just felt that he had to do one good deed that day. And I said to him, well done. So I think the thing for me that I will always instill in my children is the same, you know what I mean? Whatever you can give to somebody else, or whatever you can do for somebody else, then you do that. I think taking away local youth centres was damaging to Wolverhampton. Those were the places where I believed that young people could come, they could be safe, they would engage, they could enjoy themselves, parents would know where they were and they'd feel comfortable and happy about that. I think taking that away has caused major implications. What we see now, and especially around the summer, is young people hanging around the streets, young people who aren't engaged in any activity. And I think the biggest thing for me is there is an age group of young people who nobody knows, because nobody has that relationship, because they're not engaged with anybody. So we've almost lost probably a good 5 years of those relationships. Youth centres brought positive and strong relationships. So a young person would come in at the age of 11 years old and tantamount to they'd be with you for most of your life. And so I have still young people who I've worked with, who I'm still in contact with, who still rings me up for advice, who still checks me if I'm okay, you know what I mean? So those relationships are what I call important and golden relationships, relationships that you can't replace. What we have now is young people that aren't fortunate to have that, who there isn't that person that is there for them, that person that they can talk to outside of the family is maybe where I'm coming. But I think it was devastating to kind of lose those links, those people that if there was something going down, you would know what was going to happen. You could have that conversation before it even went. We've turned around many of young people from probably getting themselves, you know what I mean, or making that step what's going to get them into that trouble, you know what I mean. We haven't got those resources to meet anymore. And it is heartbreaking. We have some really, really good young people that have come through the system that I see are good mentors, who young people have got the relationships and the contacts with. What is missing is these venues that they've turned into other things or they've closed down. It's not everybody that is going to travel into the town centre and use a town centre provision. There are parents that won't allow their children to come off the area for lots of it. So there's lots of reasons why people don't want them to, but taking that away, I think, took away the heart. It took the heart out of youth service. So a typical day for me is that I'll get up and I look in my diary, but I look at it in the way that maybe something else is going to need to be added, or that it's not going to go, my day's not going to go the way that it wants to. So I'm very optimistic because I know that sometimes I have to adapt. So my day could start at 9 o'clock and could finish quite easily at 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I believe at the end of the day that sometimes when somebody needs you and they say, can I talk to you? I'm the kind of person that has to put on my coat and I have to be there. I have to get there, because I just think that there and then is what is needed. So I never say to people, let me have a look in my diary, because sometimes I can hear in that voice that that person needs that, or that person needs me. So if I've got to put on my coat and I've got to make the changes to get there, then that's just how it is. And I get that. I still get the texts, I still get the phone calls, but Lorna's able to adapt. That's what I do. I think the biggest one for me is the thing maybe that I set out to do, and that's you change my life. Yeah. I think that's the one that I hear quite often. But then when I know that somebody said that to me, then I know I have achieved, you know what I mean, the thing that I set out to do. It makes me feel good, you know what I mean? It drives me, because I think everybody's got something that gets them out of their bed, that gets them going. Young people's always been my thing, you know what I mean? My family knows it, my kids knows it, everybody knows it, you know what I mean? Put a young person in front of me and tell me that that young person needs help, and to me, I'll be there, you know. It gets me going. keeps me alive. My kid said to me the other day, and I said, I'm getting to that age now where it's going to be time for me to kind of hang up my boots, you know what I mean, and kind of kick back and relax. And they started to laugh, and I said, why? And they said, because you'll never do that until God takes you, you know what I mean? And I probably feel that way deep down as well. I just feel at the end of the day that, you know, my journey is not over. I believe that my next step in life and where I am now is about how do I lay that legacy down? How do I leave something behind for the next generation to come? So a lot of the work now that I'm doing is I'm focusing on the parents. So I've done all the young people bits, and now I'm going to leave them to the generation coming up, because as I said, there's some brilliant mentors out there that's doing some absolutely amazing work. So I think my forte now is to work with women, and especially those women who need that support. You know, where do you go to if you have an issue, if you have a problem? Who do you talk to? Who can help you? So I'm trying to create something, whether that be around a crisis centre, whether that be local community groups. But I'm focusing around women and empowerment. That's my biggie and my next journey. So I would say that it's at its infant stage at the moment. I think the remarkable thing that's come out of it is the amount of women that have come and said, oh yeah, I want to get involved. Definitely. So I probably have about 40, 50 women at the moment that I'm conversating with that are getting involved and planning and volunteering and getting volunteer status. What's this going to look like? Consulting with other women. But it's amazing because I just think as a mother sometimes you carry a lot, you know what I mean? You do a lot. And sometimes when things aren't, and I'm not going to say go wrong, because I think as mothers, even when things go wrong, we adapt, we change to make sure to support that thing. I think it's who is there to support. The mum is what I'm kind of getting to. So I'm really excited about that. And I think the beauty about it is that I've also got a group of women that have come through youth services with me that have become career-minded, and nurses, social workers, housing have come together that now are going to kind of support me to give back something to the community. So it's nice to bring a legacy along with me and to have living proof of that legacy, where they are going to be the ones that are going to take the reins in time to come. So yeah, but I think inside of you, you have something that makes you tick, that makes you determined. So I think that side of Lorna made up her mind a long time ago. And like I said, I go back to, you know, I was 15 when I kind of, you know, decided what my journey was going to be and where I was going to lay my head in the long run. But the other side of Lorna has learned so much from these young people, because it's a two-way process. So as much at the end of the day that people will say that I've learned from you, without them and without the teaching and the knowledge from them, I wouldn't have been able to achieve what I've achieved. Yeah. And sometimes you've got to take your coat off, brush yourself down and get into their world and see it from their point of view. And I think sometimes if you're not prepared to do that, you don't get that feeling, you know, that deepness inside of what's really going on, you know what I mean? Sometimes you have to go down to their level, hear it from them and see it from their eyes. And then when you come out, that makes you more informed, because I just think to myself, okay, so now I know that, how am I going to deal with this? You know what I mean? But I already know what the deep scenario is. And if you can't go deep, and Lorna likes to go deep, you know what I mean? I have to go deep. Yeah, I have to go on that journey with them. And to me, at the end of the day, it's a pointless exercise. But Yeah, so there's the Lorna who knows and the Lorna who's learned. It works hand in hand. I've documented a few things, but I think also what I've tried to do along the line is to bring the youth them along as well. So I know that of young people who are now mentors. I know of young people now who are managers in certain jobs, because we have to do that. You know, there's no point having all that experience and all that knowledge and not being able to lay it down or pass it on to somebody else. To me, it would be a selfish way of thinking. Yeah. The beauty about all of this is to be able to open my little kit bag, as I call it, and take things out and give it to people along the way. And I still do that. So I'll probably be walking in town, I'll be driving in my car, and I still do it. I'll stop and I'll say, do you need some help? Or the person looks at, and I'll still take something out and give. You can find me. If you need any support, this is where I am. Or I know somebody that can help you, and I still do it. And I do it out of the blue. And, you know, I think my kids are amazed probably more than anybody else, because I'll be driving, and if I see something or if I need somebody, then I'll stop my car. I've gone round a roundabout and come back up because I thought that person needed. So even though I know that I'm going somewhere and I might be late, that person needed. And I've done it so many times. I've gone round the roundabout, come back down and stop the car and ask somebody. And I think that's what, you know, it's the little things in life, to me, that we can do and that we can give that makes the difference, that changes the shape of a person's situation there and then, you know what I mean? That little thing that you do, and you don't know the impact of what that might have done to them. So you might never see that person again. But you don't know, you know what I mean, how much of that little thing that you've given or that little thing that you've done might have changed the whole shape of their life there and there. I think people would assume that I'm humble, but I'm not humble. I've heard that one, but I wouldn't quite say that I am fully humble. I think I know how to swing that one, and I'm not going to do another one. That's a difficult one. Okay. Ask me something else. I think the one that I've always carried from a kid, and I think it's one that probably most people in my family kind of hooks onto. I think it's Many Rivers to Cross by Jimmy Cliff. Because that's how I see life, you know what I mean? It's not every day that the sun is going to shine. Life is about crossing, and we have our ups, you know what I mean, and we have our downs, but I think it's realising that when we do get to the other side, that however small it is, you can still find something good, you know, that thing inside of people. So I think, you know, you can always see somebody, and I think people are good to talk about the negative sides of individuals, so we can always find something negative. It's like young people. People can always find something negative to say about, but it's very few people that will stand there and say something positive. I sometimes struggle with that, because I always think to myself, no matter what the situation is, always leave that person with one positive, you understand, inside of them, because they've still got a bridge, you know what I mean? That if they can cross the bridge with that one positive, to me, when they get to the other side, they might be able to see what they're looking for. But I think that conversations that I've had when people say bad young people, I can honestly say in my 40 odd years that I have never ever met a bad young person, never. I think young people make bad decisions, yeah, but I've never met a bad young person, because I think a blessing from God is not bad. I love gardening. Yeah, I think that's and I've grown to love it even more as I've got older. So if I could go outside and spend 24 hours outside, I can't wait until the summer, then I'd do that. So gardening is kind of my thing. So TV's not my thing, definitely, so I very rarely watch TV, but I think my music and gardening, those are the things that I enjoy most. My dream would be to have somewhere where, whether it be maybe young people or whether it be families, can go somewhere that can help, where people are there that can answer that call of help, is once for a word. So, you know, that we're not a 9 till 5. We're that place that's, you know, if you just feel that just need that person to talk to, or I need somebody to help me, then there's a door that they're able to knock. I think that's sometimes the thing that we're lacking, that society's become, I don't know, so many things have been taken away from us. So I think I'd rather have my legacy to look that's something that people can see, somewhere that people can go and access the support and the help that they need. I think that would be in a nutshell.